Chapter number 2. A legend is born. Ali was the most beloved to Muhammad. Al-Abbas ibn Abd al-Muttalib. The knights of Banu Hashim would come together for a glorious night. The family gathered joyously. The men, the women, and the children sat around in a circle near the Kaaba, the house of God they protected. As with any family gathering, conversations ensued, jokes were made, and laughter broke out within the smaller circles of the family. But as their chief approached, the chatter gave way to silence. The weight of his prestige was felt in every step he took. The laughter would cease, and the stillness would follow. His family did not fear him, they were in awe of him. They admired Abd al-Muttalib and endeared him. Even if he was just gone for a short while, his children and grandchildren longed for him. He was the father of them all. Abd al-Muttalib walked into the family circle and the youngsters quickly cleared multiple seats for him to take his place. Wherever sit, that space would become the focal point of the gathering. He smiled graciously and slowly sat down. Twinkles in their eyes, they gazed at their gallant father, waiting for him to speak. Looking towards his son, Abu Talib, he said, "Is it not time for you to get married, and for us to celebrate your marriage, my son?" Abu Talib's eyes, however, were glued to the ground. A moment of silence passed. The bashful son mustered the courage to respond without moving his gaze from the sand at his feet. "You are better to assess the..." Abd al-Muttalib smiled, "And do you have a liking of any of the daughters of Arabia?" The silence grew louder. "No, father. Whatever you choose, for that is what I would have comfort and contentment in." The family glanced back and forth at the bashful son and the endeared father. Not much time passed, but to those in the gathering, time could not have gone by any slower. Who would Abd al-Muttalib choose for his son? The choice was not an easy one. The Banu Hashim were viewed as royalty amongst the Arabians, uniquely standing out from within their tribe of Quraysh. As such, any home in Arabia would proudly see their daughter be wed to the young Abu Talib. Such homes raised daughters that Banu Hashim would be proud to take in as their own. So, the choice was even more difficult and time felt like eternity. While Abu Talib's bashful eyes fixated on the sand, Abd al-Muttalib's gaze did not leave his son. He was proud of the man his son had become. The respect and honor reflected in his mannerisms were not a show of weakness or incompetence, but rather of humility and humbleness. Abd al-Muttalib stroked his grey beard and smiled. That smile lit up the dark night like a flaming lantern in a Meccan cave. "O Abd Manaf, I have chosen for you Fatma, the daughter of my brother, Asad. I pray that you are happy with my choice." Everyone smiled joyously, including Abu Talib. There could not have been a better choice. The young couple would grow to build one of the purest homes of Arabia. Abu Talib and Fatma were faithful, generous, and brilliant. It was their humble home that raised a young orphan boy. A boy who would grow up to be the greatest man to walk this earth, Muhammad. Indeed, Abu Talib and Fatima raised the Prophet Muhammad in their home. Muhammad was Abu Talib's nephew, the son of his brother, Abdullah. As told, Muhammad's father passed away months before he was born. His mother, Amna, would care for him as mother and father. Her love was all-encompassing. But within a few short years, she too would pass away, leaving Muhammad orphaned of mother and father. He was 6 years old. For 2 years after the passing of his mother, Muhammad would grow under the care of his grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib. He loved Muhammad dearly. He was the center of his universe. Abd al-Muttalib took his grandson wherever he went. They walked the desert and reflected on God's creation. The vastness of the blue sky could not be rationed. The grains of the golden sand could not be tallied. The favors of God could not be numbered. Such reflections carried on in the shadow of the Kaaba, a place they both loved to be. Abd al-Muttalib was the protector house of God, and in due time his grandson would be too. "That blessed, great things will come from you, my son," Abd al-Muttalib repeated to his grandson. Muhammad would look up at his loving grandfather and smile. But Abd al-Muttalib would not stay forever. Muhammad would lose yet another beloved. Before he died at the age of 80, Abd al-Muttalib assigned the responsibility of raising Muhammad to his son, Abu Talib. Abd al-Muttalib told Abu Talib, "This boy will be something great. Protect him. Do not let any harm come his way." Surely, Abu Talib would do as his father wished. He would take in his young nephew and raise him like his own. His wife Fatma shared Abu Talib's empathy, compassion, and readiness to care for Muhammad. The Archangel Gabriel would come to Muhammad later in life and tell him, "O Muhammad, God sends you his peace and says, I have forbidden hellfire on the backbone that begot you, the womb that held you, and the chest that embraced you." He responded, "O Gabriel, who are they?" "The backbone that begot you is your father, Abdullah ibn Abd al-Muttalib, while the womb that held you is your mother, Amna bint Wahab. And as for the chest that embraced you, it is Abd Manaf ibn Abd al-Muttalib and Fatma bint Asad." Abd al-Muttalib tasked his son to protect that orphan. With the care of Abu Talib, that boy would grow to be the mercy to mankind. Every day that passed in his lifetime, Muhammad and honor. As a young closer and closer to saving humanity from slavery and bondage, too. Man of his 20s, Muhammad was already seen as Ai Sadiq, the truthful, and Al-Amin, the trusted, of his community. That was an honor for the house of Abu Talib. A gifted poet and orator, Abu Talib would later in life recite words of poetry describing his relationship to Muhammad. "By my life, I am utterly devoted to Muhammad and his brethren, with all the devotion of a close admirer. He is kind, intelligent, just, steady, the ally of a God of whom he is ever aware. And the Lord of men has aided him with victory, and he has brought forth a religion the truth of which shall stay. I cared for him myself, protected him, and defended him by our heads and chests." And there was more that came from the house of Abu Talib and Fatma. There was surely more. It was a Friday morning and the 13th day of the month of Rajab. Muhammad was 30 years of age at that time. Abu Talib's wife, Fatma, was expecting another son. 3 days prior to that Friday, she found herself circulating the Kaaba in worship. Fatma asked God for mercy and strength in her pregnancy. As she prayed, she felt a sharp pain too similar to the pangs of labor. Some say that such laborious pain was not expected as she had yet to come full term in her pregnancy. As she contemplated the possibilities, she was interrupted again by the rippling pain. The pain overwhelmed Fatma and made it nearly impossible to contain her groans of agony. Eyes turned to her and Fatma knew that it was time. But where would she go? The pangs of labor quickly paralyzed her, and she found herself unable to leave the Kaaba's holy site. Her palms clenched the skirts of the Kaaba and she held on to dear life. Not wanting to continue as a victim of people's unforgiving eyes, she took the cloth of God's house and covered herself with it. She called out to the heavens and said, "O Lord of this house, veil me and save me and my baby from every harm." Her short prayer barely ended and the walls of the Kaaba began to crack. There was no earthquake felt for the walls to tremble, nor lightning to bring down its mighty walls. The walls of the Kaaba miraculously opened for her, and she walked in. It was as if the angels of heaven carved out an opening and welcomed the daughter of Asad into God's house. Protected she was, as her Lord veiled her from every harm. People stood in awe as they saw the Kaaba walls open up and close after her. They could no longer see nor hear Fatma. She was in the guardianship of the Kaaba's angels and no one else. Abu Talib would come to the scene within the hour. One of the neighbors had recognized Fatma and quickly went to inform Abu Talib of his wife's labor. Abu Talib would patiently wait outside the walls of the Kaaba for the news of his newborn baby. Behind him was a crowd of Banu Hashim, anxiously awaiting their new baby cousin. For 3 days, Fatma would stay within the walls of the Kaaba. Finally, as the 4th day broke, Fatma would come out. The walls of the Kaaba would open up once again for her grand exit. She held her baby boy, who was wrapped in the cloth of the Kaaba, and enjoyed the greatest smile, seen only on the face of a mother. Abu Talib leaped towards her in excitement. She handed her boy to his jubilant father. Abu Talib held his son in his hands. He too smiled so brightly, the family behind the couple gleaming in joy. Given the distinguished honor of being born in the Kaaba itself, Abu Talib knew the perfect name for his newborn son. His name will be Ali, he said as he smiled down at his baby boy. The high, the elevated, the champion Ali. It was as if, with the birth of Ali, the Kaaba would experience a new era. This boy was special. No one had the honor that he just experienced. No one in history was, or would be, born in the Kaaba. No one. The family knew he was special, and that he was no ordinary boy. Amongst the family that day was Ali's cousin, Muhammad. An evident truth under the sun and skies, no one was happier that day than Muhammad. For on that day, it was not only his cousin that was born, it would be his best friend, his confidant, and his successor. It is said that the first person the newborn Ali opened his eyes to was Muhammad. And from that day, Ali never did take his eyes off him. Ali was born to amazing parents and surrounded by many siblings, 3 brothers and 3 sisters, who loved him and cared for him deeply. Though their home was a humble one, it never felt void or empty. When Ali was only 5 years old, however, Makkah was struck with a terrible famine. Although Abu Talib was a wealthy, successful man, his family, like many families, suffered as well. The difference was that Abu Talib never turned anyone away. Throughout the famine, he still welcomed guests into his home and cared for any needy person who knocked on his door. His generosity knew no bounds. To ease the inevitable hardship that would ensue, some of Abu Talib's family members asked to care for his sons during the famine. The help came from Abu Talib's brothers, Hamza and Al-Abbas, as well as his nephew Muhammad. Abu Talib had 4 sons, Talib, Jafar, Aqil, and Ali. Their relatives came over to pick up the sons of Abu Talib. It is said that their mother, Fatma, preferred to keep Aqil with her, so he stayed home under her care. Talib would be taken under the wing of his uncle, Al-Abbas, and Hamza would care for Jafar. Standing there as they were assigned, Muhammad would smile and say to the youngest of the brothers, "And I have chosen the one whom God has chosen for me." Ali smiled back at his cousin Muhammad. Though the famine would pass, Ali would remain under the care of his beloved cousin Muhammad. Ali grew up in the household of Muhammad, just as Muhammad grew up in the household of Abu Talib. Muhammad would cook for him and feed him by his own hand as he sat in his lap. Ali followed his cousin wherever he went. Muhammad taught him all that he knew. Ali became his shadow. He emulated every stroke and every move, every smile and every laugh. People were in awe of the maturity of this young man, as he was such an inspiring reflection of Muhammad's unmatched character and stature. The early companions of the Prophet would describe it by saying, "We used to look at Ali during the days of the Prophet, the same way we looked up at the stars in the sky." Ali himself would describe his childhood with the Prophet in saying, "I followed the Prophet wherever he went. Every day he would teach me something new from the chest of his wisdom and ethics, and then he would order me to act on it." Many years later, Fadl ibn al-Abbas asked his father, who also happened to be Muhammad's uncle, who was the most beloved child to the Prophet. Ali was the most beloved to him. Al-Abbas answered his son. Confused, Fadl responded to this father, "Wait. I am asking you about his own children, who was the most beloved to him of his own children." Ali was more beloved and adored to him than all of his children. He never spent a moment away from him, unless he absolutely had to travel for work. We never witnessed a father better to a son than he was to Ali, nor did we see a son who was more devoted to a father than Ali was to Muhammad. Muhammad raised Ali and shaped him to be the man he would become. Ali would become Muhammad's closest companion, confidant, and the gatekeeper to his true self. It is no surprise that the Prophet would say to his companions, "Ali is from me and I am from Ali, and he is the master of every believer after me."